Tell me if this has ever happened to you before. You are sitting down watching TV and are watching the show that is expected to be airing, when suddenly, the content stops and changes to something completely unexpected. Either a mysterious message, an audio recording, or something that appears to be flat out strange. Chances are you've never experienced this phenomenon in real time before, but there's a good chance you've at least heard about it happening before. When the broadcast signals of TV or cable stations are tapped into by another party without permission, this is called a broadcast signal intrusion or a signal hijacking. And throughout the history of television, there have been many documented cases of parties interrupting broadcast signals to display cryptic messages or simply to mess with the viewing audience. One of the most famous instances of this occurring are the Max Headroom hijackings from November 1987, where an unidentified man, wearing a mask of the character Max Headroom, made a few remarks before participating in a suggestive scene with a woman wearing a maid costume. This happened twice in the same night on 2 TV stations in Chicago, Illinois, and to this day, no one involved with the incident has been identified. There was another, less offensive occurrence a year prior, when someone named Captain Midnight interrupted HBO's satellite signal feed with a message to show his frustration with HBO's service rates and how it was hurting his business of selling satellite dishes. This time, however, the person behind it was caught after another man heard him bragging about the incident. Needless to say, the intentions and content range quite a bit when it comes to broadcast intrusions. But there was one time when it happened that has become quite infamous over the years for how inappropriate the content that was shown really was, and also has not been recovered, making it a piece of lost media too. The story begins on a channel that you might think would be the last place for a signal hijacking to occur, and that's Disney Channel. And compared to the previous examples of news stations and subscription services being targeted, the amount of people watching Disney Channel who would be privy to these acts is far fewer, and interrupting cartoons or sitcoms for kids doesn't really seem like it's worth the effort. But perhaps it's in this fact that would make it the perfect place to cause some havoc, and show something that its viewers purposely wouldn't understand, but that would cause anger with their parents, especially since we're not just talking about Disney Channel, but more specifically, the Playhouse Disney block. This is a programming block with content that's made for younger kids, and is often the kind of thing a parent would leave on for their kid to watch, knowing it's safe and intended for them. But when broadcast intrusions are involved, that's not necessarily the case, and it's exactly what happened one morning that caused a whole storm of controversy for the channel. If you happen to be watching Playhouse Disney on the morning of May 2nd, 2007, the show that was intended to air uninterrupted was Handy Manny. It's a CGI cartoon about a handyman and his talking tools that own a repair shop and go around town helping people fix their broken stuff. The series had only premiered a year prior, so the show was relatively new and still in its prime. But viewers of the show would be seeing something unexpected. At around 9:30 a.m., during the beginning of Handy Manny, the feed was suddenly interrupted, and in its place was a hardcore adult film. While there are no reports on how long the interruption lasted, the claims range from less than a minute to several minutes. It just showed up with no warning, and as mentioned previously, spread around news outlets almost immediately. It was confirmed through these reports that the hijacking was isolated to the Middletown, New Jersey area, more specifically Lincroft, so it wasn't a nationwide incident, though one parent from the area named Paul was very vocal about what was shown. It was 2 people doing their thing. It was full on and it was disgusting. I try to protect my kids from a lot of things, but I wouldn't have thought Disney would become one of them. My son was extremely upset because he thought he'd done something wrong, and we're hoping what he saw doesn't become an issue for him. After the damage had already been done, the question became for parents like Paul and Disney, how did this happen? Despite what Paul mentioned in his interview, that he can't believe Disney is something they have to protect their son from, Disney was not the company to blame for this. Comcast admitted that they were responsible for the error. It happened at one of their local facilities and was described as an isolated issue by spokesperson Fred DeAndrea. He didn't provide any details on how long the hijacking lasted or how many homes may have seen it, but it must have been a lot for so many news articles to have picked up the story. Disney and the State Board of Public Utilities did end up reaching out to Comcast afterwards and asked them to take appropriate measures to make sure such an occurrence doesn't happen again. This was reconfirmed in a statement from Disney stating, "Comcast has taken full responsibility for this situation, and we understand that they are currently working to determine the root cause of the incident." Comcast ended up reaching out to Paul personally and apologizing, following an investigation into the cause of this. But unfortunately, they never reported their findings publicly, so it's not known if anyone was caught or got in trouble for it. Over the years, there's been quite a bit of debate online surrounding how this happened or who could have done it, with some theories pointing towards the likelihood that signals had accidentally been switched or it ended up airing on TV by accident. But these instances seem fairly unlikely. Believe it or not, hijacking broadcast signals to show adult content has been a pretty frequent occurrence over the years. Several years later, in 2012, Disney was targeted again when 6 minutes of a hardcore adult movie were shown during Lilo and Stitch on Disney Junior, the successor to Playhouse Disney. Earlier than that, in March 2010, Time Warner Cable's transmissions of kids and preschool kids content was replaced with Playboy TV for 2 hours. But perhaps the most relevant example related to the Handy Manny incident happened only 2 years after in a very similar way. This story also made headlines back in 2009 because it happened during one of the most viewed television events here in the US, the Super Bowl. At another Comcast facility in Tucson, Arizona, NBC's signal was replaced with 37 seconds of another adult movie and interrupted the game during the fourth quarter. In this instance, Comcast did claim it was an isolated, malicious act, and 3 days later, a former Cox Cable employee was arrested and pleaded guilty to 2 counts of computer tampering. And in the case of the Handy Manny interruption, it also seems very likely that this would be the result of a malicious act. Though since the issue has long since been concluded, it's likely that we'll never get an official statement on the results of the investigation. As for the broadcast hijacking itself, the recording of the incident is still lost, but you can find some discussion about it online. There was a thread created on Reddit from March 2022, who was attempting to find someone with a copy, and there's another thread from a day after it happened that discusses the incident as a whole on the Unexplained Mysteries forums. The author, who lives in New Jersey, asks if any of his fellow New Jersey dwellers had been watching Disney Channel at the time of the broadcast, but no one in the thread claims to have seen it. For the sake of preservation and broadcast hijack history, I suppose it's something that has value to some people, but overall, it's nothing nearly as original as Max Headroom or Captain Midnight. I'm not sure how anyone would go about finding it nowadays, but it must have been seen by a lot of viewers to have been reported on so much. But even if a copy of it does resurface, the reason or person behind the incident will remain a mystery and live in the ranks of unsolved television hijackings. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to check out some of my other Lost Media videos. Thanks for watching, and until next time, Finn.